Ready.
All right, guys, welcome to Talk of the Week. This week we have Ashton and we have my two buddies, which is Indy and Mo. Unfortunately, Espin couldn't join us today. He's helping his missus go through her at least one person in the family managed to get a complex. And so yeah, that's why he's not here with us today. So welcome back, Ash. How are we doing, sir?
Oh, I'm good. It's a relatively cool morning in Texas, and just grilling and enjoying myself.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm sure you're drinking that because of the win, isn't it? Or your win for your USAPL nuts. This is
No, it's just because it's Sunday.
oh, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, boys. Literally, free flow for everybody. Know about me taking over or asking questions. Anyone that have any, come for it. Ash, I'm gonna start up one of the most obvious questions that probably I had. I know people will be expecting me to go all the way to straight to it, but I'm gonna ask this: what made you cut down to 105? Because I was expecting you to be a 120.
Oh, you mean like for the IPF or for this recent meet that I did?
Yes. Yes. For the recent meet that you did, I was expecting you to be 110. That's not
Yes,
120.
yes, yes.
USAPL is 110, right? Am I getting
110.
It's
it right? Yeah.
110. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
It's the OG weight classes, the old school weight classes. Yeah. So a lot of prep. I was actually relatively heavier. I was usually like 107, 108, and then some days I got up to 110 at night after eating a metric shit ton. But on the meet the week of the meet, what kind of happened was I got to Memphis like Wednesday. I drove 11 hours to get there. Um, and I got there and the food wasn't great. So I naturally didn't eat as much throughout the week, which was fine. I just ate enough to kind of, feel satiated and go watch the meet and enjoy, the venue and such. So by the time we got to meet day, I was like 105.8 or something like that. Which was kind of a little surprising to me, but not too surprising at the same time because there's this thing like when I gain weight, inevitably some of it's probably going to be water, some of it's probably going to come off a lot easier really fast. And so that's kind of what happened. And I kind of just came in a little bit light, like 105.8 or something like that. So it really wasn't actually intentional. It was just sort of a byproduct of the circumstances of being in Memphis, really,
I mean,
which was fine.
I know we're going to touch down to that, so I just don't want to ask the question ahead of this. But do you think you coming down that light, do you think it affected your performance?
Mm, not really. Um, no, not really. I mean, no.
Cool, that's fine. So
What
yeah,
weight, sorry, going off that, what weight do you usually sit at out of comp, off season, just generally? What's your weight usually?
Well, usually for the last like year or so, I usually sit around like 104 to 105 actually. So only very recently have I actually gained like more weight, and it was very intentional and aggressive too, the weight gain. But normally no, I usually sit around like between 104 and 105.
all right, all right, all right. So, the other thing as well is about these 110 stories. How did it came about for you to start thinking or probably doing the 110s? Was it just because of the keen and competition, or was it something about yourself to just test yourself what you can do being too heavy?
Oh no, it was directly related to the competition. So, um, I actually, in a perfect world, I wish like the 100 weight class was a thing, and I could just do 100 forever and just be like jacked and handsome and never have to worry about it. But it's not. So, a lot of the heavy hitters were in 110 this year. The 100s this year, you may have noticed at USAPL Nats, um, they have rising talent, but the problem is there's a big vacuum in that weight class right now. So if I competed there, it would have been a very easy win. I wouldn't have really had to try. It wouldn't have been the same experience, right?
Mhm.
Whereas with 110s, there was this potential for this legendary matchup, a three-way matchup, which rarely happens. Like a three-way matchup where like all three dudes can break the open, like world record. I'm talking like all-time drug tested record, and like that potential is there, and they're all competing on the same day, the same platform, the same time, head to head. Like that doesn't happen often. Um, as a matter of fact, I don't know when the last time that's happened, but it was really cool to be a part of that, and I wanted to be a part of that, and I know that just historically speaking, me competing with the best of the best is what gets me better, not,
Mm,
just competing to
mm.
just to compete, right? There was more of a sense of purpose and tied behind this one, and it invigorated me a lot.
So, I mean, I know, again, because I'm not trying to bring this as a breakup show, but I'm trying probably just to pick your brains in terms of like the prep to the nuts. You know what I mean? How was the prep? What was the expectation from your side before we got into the day itself? And from the get go, from the beginning, if you can talk us through it.
So my expectation of like how the meet was gonna go.
So basically, how the prep started, if you had any issues across along the way, and also your
Mhm.
expectation for the meet itself.
Okay, so how the prep went, and then the expectations for the meet after the prep. Okay, so for the prep, generally, so it started off really strong. So I moved back to Texas. I was lifting like crazy weights. Like I was like tripling like 793 on squat, and then doubling like 821, and then my deadlift was actually doing pretty good for a little while. I didn't push it too aggressively, but all the weights were flying. Like it was going great, and the bench was going really good too. Especially the month leading into nationals, the bench was going crazy. Like everything just felt effortless. Um, and I was pretty confident that I'd be able to hit a really big bench, um, which I didn't on the meet day. And there was a pretty good reason for that, but I'll get into that, excuse me, later. But basically, I want to say like 7-ish weeks out, I had like a mild back strain thingy. And I was like, oh shit. So, for lack of better words, so what I did was I kind of toughed it out those last few really heavy sessions, and I hit those really big weights. So like when I squatted 832 and I doubled 810 on deadlift, like that was with like the strain and a lot of pain.
Mm,
So what I told myself was, all right, I'll hit this biggest session 4 weeks out,
mm,
and then the remaining 4 weeks going into the meet, I'm going to take a relatively conservative approach and ramp the weights up, but it's not going to be too heavy before the competition. And so that's exactly what I did pretty much. Like I don't think I deadlifted over, uh, I don't think I deadlifted over 661 before those 4 weeks before the meet.
mm.
And for squat, I don't think I went over, I want to say, how much did I do that last week? Maybe like high 600s or something like that, low sevens. Yeah, nothing too aggressive. I just wanted to allow my body to heal and to keep training just to keep, the groove of things. And so my expectation for the meet was I'll at least be healed enough to hit like, near maximal squat or near maximal deadlift. And bench was going phenomenally in training. I should be able to hit a crazy bench. But I was really shocked what happened with bench on the day. But again, that was for like a specific set of reasons, not necessarily because I wasn't strong. Um, so my expectation was, to hit within the 800, 30 to 50 range for squat, to hit within the 830 to 50 range for deadlift, and to hit, the 485 to 500, 507 range for bench. Um, so I kind of came in. I mean, I really hit close to all those. I wasn't really too far off from my estimates, and I estimated that that would also win it, right? So I didn't think 1,000 kilos or 2,200 was going to win it. I thought that was outlandish, not because we're not strong, but rather because when you have head-to-head matchups like that, the goal isn't to necessarily hit the biggest total that you possibly can. It's to win, right? So you play to win, not play to put up the biggest total or dots or whatever possible. So it's a completely different, approach to competing. So you may not always necessarily maximize your total, but you hit the total that's necessary to win. And on that day, you needed over 960 kilos to win. And I put up 968 on the day. Um, and I was an inch and one white light away from a 990.5 kilo total, which is really what I wanted. But winning with 968 was still pretty good given the day that we had.
I think that's key, isn't it? I mean, if Indy's been saying this for years in terms of like sometime when you come to these big mates, you just have to do what need to be done for you to win. Even if like you guys, you big hitters like yourself, if he asks for you to do 930, you do 930 for the win. Doesn't matter if you have to do 1,000. A win is a win. So that is probably to me, I would say, the young kids that are listening to us, this is really key. on the midday, just do what you need to do for you to win. In terms of
Hmm.
like, you mentioned there, in terms of the injuries, I know the guys will jump in because they have got questions as well. I just want to touch down on this one. What would you say in terms of like 7 week out, you go some sort of an injury you're dealing with that you probably can hinder your training. How did you overcome that in terms of this is I'm talking about now, it's a mindset now, right? Because we all have got different mindset. So I just want to pick your
Yeah.
brain. Like, how do you deal with that knowing, oh, I got this setback, but I still have to go and load, let's say, well, 800 pound squat. So something like that. How do you overcome that?
Yeah. So, you know, I rationalize a lot of things really well, right? It's kind of almost like a positive but realistic, it's like a realistic approach to optimism, right? So I'm, certainly not an optimist in the sense that it's just always, wishful thinking and just hope, but it's hope combined with, realistic sort of optimism. Um, so, I told myself, hey, like I hit like a 21 whatever total, like 2105 or something with doubles on bench, doubles on deadlift, and I hit the single on squat. Um, and I have 4 weeks to heal from this. So by the time I show up, even if I'm not 100%, I should be good enough to go. There's no reason that I'm not. So as long as I train, intelligently up into the meet, which is exactly what I did. And it played out exactly as I thought. And then plus, I told myself I've been here before. I've had this similar back strain before. I got over it. I hit PRs after it. This isn't the end. Like, there's no need to panic or freak out. Just do what you do when this happens, and you'll be fine by the time the meet rolls around. And that's kind of what happened for the most part.
So that's key there. It's just like again, I always say that almost be able to listen to your body and be able to talk yourself out of it. But it doesn't mean like you have to ignore the pain or you have to know the injury because some people make a mistake of thinking, oh, I'm injured, I'm just gonna ignore it. I'm just gonna go and lift even if I'm injured. No, it's gonna get worse. You have to be able to almost manage your pain and manage the training, be able to adjust those two into one. So yeah, boys, I know you guys got questions there, so you just nodding there. I'm sure there's so many. So let's go for you, Mo.
Hello, Ashton. I had a very quick question.
Yeah, what's
USAPL
up?
Nationals was amazing, amazing performance. One thing I was very, very impressed by, hey, your squat was insane. Your bench was, it looks like you've made a lot of stride and gains in your bench right now. So I wanted to ask from a programming side and also just any injuries you're dealing with, what's been the secret for your bench increase? Because
Mhm.
at that meet, I know there was a crazy story in the warm-up room where you only took two warm-ups with Bob and everything that happened back
That's pretty
then.
much what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you looked really, I thought you actually had 220. I thought you were going to go for 222.5. And that's massive. That's a massive gain for your total, especially because you're known as the squat freak and the deadlift monster. Right. So what have you changed on your bench recently and what are you looking forward to hit going forward? Because your bench looks on a very, very positive trend right now.
Yeah. So I would probably say that about for the last like 5 or 6 of my primary bench training days, I honestly felt like I could hit over 500 pounds because I've done it before, so I kind of know what it feels like. So I was very confident that I could do it almost any day, like any primary training day, because the weights just all felt insane. Um, and the problem, well, okay, so let me talk about the meet first, and then I'll kind of walk you through some of the programming stuff. So the problem at the meet was primarily the warm up issue. So um, things were moving a little bit faster than we expected. Um, and so I only took 2 bench warm ups. I hit 155, and then I hit 407, and then I did my opener like 452. And 452 and 474 both felt, fine. But the problem is I felt a little more unstable while benching than usual. Like you probably wouldn't notice it on the stream, but there was definitely a more of a slight shake in my arm than usual. Usually at that kind of weight, like it's
Okay.
just I'm just completely solid. Like there's no shaking. Like I hold, I've held over 700 pounds. Like 400 something is not crazy, but that day I felt especially unstable, holding the bench, and I was just like, oh boy, we're in for a rough one. So I was actually surprised that 220 didn't come up because it didn't really feel hard off the chest or anything. It felt fine. And then I just kind of hit a brick wall, but really unstable at the start. And I think that probably just affected the overall quality of that specific attempt, um, which is fine. Like if I got a reattempt, I probably would have hit it, but it is
Yeah.
what it
You
is because I
you
probably would
looked
have been more
very strong.
acclimated to the weight. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as the programming and stuff, what we were doing, so it's two parts. So one with the programming, so I was benching 3 days a week. Um, so what we found is if I like train my wide grip too much, it just tends to not respond well to that for some reason. So the majority of my training is close grip. So on the primary day, I do only wide grip. I do a top set and then I do, back down sets that are relatively heavy, like a small percent drop, just to get really acclimated to lifting heavy weight with that grip. And then on the secondary day, I usually do like a pause single, and I usually control the loads very well in those days. I don't go like absurdly heavy. And then the back downs are close grip. And then on the tertiary day, I just do close grip. And then on the tertiary day, the trick for me is we found that lifting within like the 260 to like the 315-pound range on the tertiary day for just reps works really well for me because that tertiary day I usually feel the crummiest anyway, and it feels a little uncomfortable and doesn't always feel great. But just doing the motion and going through it and getting into work, just for some reason really helps me show up so well on my primary day. Just having that like extra little stimulus in there. So that's kind of what we did programming wise, and then technique wise, I had changed my technique just a little bit too. I had really put an emphasis on trying to tension and use my upper back while benching. And I was using sort of my feet and my legs to leverage my upper body while I was setting up a lot more than I used to in the past. And so that really helped like tremendously. So that streak was probably always there. I think it was just more so a technical thing that I really didn't do beforehand. That made for much more consistent pressing and taking 215 for a second attempt, and it moved really well. So I honestly I thought I had a lot more. But taking 215 for a second attempt, was really awesome for me. Like you said, it's a lot of progress. So that was really cool. It's gotten a lot more consistent rep to rep with that kind of technique, small technique changes, and with the programming considerations, that as well. Going forward though, like most of my benching is probably going to be close grip though. I know the IPF has the whole, elbow rule.
You're fine, man.
And yeah, no, I know. Like, I know, right? Like my range of motion for bench, even with the max grip, is longer than most people I know. It's really long, but for me, I've always liked close grip benching, and it looks cooler, and I get more jacked. And the other thing too is, the Alico bench is like it's more narrow than the Texas, I think. So when I benched on the Alico bench in Austin, because they got all their stuff straight from the Alico headquarters in Austin. So when I benched on their bench like wide grip, it just felt so uncomfortable. And I realized it was because half of my shoulder was hanging off the seat. So like my chest is over 50 inches, right? So like that seat to me is like kind of narrow.
Yeah, you're wide. I think so. I know when we went Malta, I don't know if Indy and Jurins actually noticed, but Alico was actually testing a new bench pad that they put in a corner. So actually, whichever one you'd used last time might be different by the time you're competing again, in Alico meet. But they've not. They had set that up in the corner in Malta, and they were telling lifters to test it out and give them their opinions. So there was like a whole athlete, like a feedback. So that was really cool.
But that one,
well,
Ash, to be honest, all those bench size or bench pad only works for people that can actually bench. People now you can bench, Ash. Now you can bench. Last time you came around, I gave you a good hit on your bench, but seeing you getting 215 for a second, I was just watching. I was like, oh shit, Ash, I'm gonna shut my mouth off this time.
I almost did. I messed up a little bit on the day, but again, there were some things out of my control. But yeah, no, for sure. No, that's cool to hear though. Like if they do implement that and the new seat's like a little bit more like broad, then something that I would probably compete with a wider grip again. But I'm still gonna my training is still majority close grip though.
Close grip.
I probably won't even touch a wide grip again for a few months. Anyway.
Okay.
All right, Indy, yourself, any questions?
Yeah, so you covered it a little bit. We're just gonna keep with the meat stuff for the USAPL meat stuff for the time being. You covered it a little bit, but just the mentality of getting injured, not being able to, like you said, you weren't even touching 700 pounds on the deadlift, and then to go into a comp and pull 800 plus. How do you deal with that sort of thing? How do you like fix it in your head that, okay, yeah, I haven't touched these weights, but on meet day, I'm just going to put 130 50 pounds on top of this lift and then just do it.
Yep.
Like in my opinion, it breaks most people. You know,
Yeah, I
it
think
break me.
I think a lot of people. No, for sure. I think a lot of people get way too in their heads about it. So for me, I'm like, hey, I've done this like so many times. I've done so many 800 plus pound pulls. I've almost hit 900 before. Like, if I go into this meet and I feel decent and I can put up an 840 squat, there's no reason that I can't deadlift over 800. That's like the way I rationalize it in my head. And I,
Okay.
honestly, and it's not even just like me rationalizing it to make myself feel better, but I actually genuinely believe it. Like I know shit, like I believe if I can do that, like, dude, there's no reason you should be hitting under this. There's no excuse. Like your back is fine. It hurts a little bit, but get over it. Like you can manage this.
Just to
That's
hop
pretty
onto
much it.
what India's actually mentioned, because I've experienced this myself. Like honestly, it's hard for lifters. Like you said, I've pulled 800 pounds multiple times. I know we should be there on meet day if I feel good, right? But there's this little voice in your head that tells you, according to my prep and based on
Mhm.
previous data, I should be pulling this on this week because I know when I did this last time, I pulled 800 pounds in the competition. And you see a lot of lifters do it. They will overshoot 3 to 4 weeks out or 2 weeks out because they want to
Mhm.
hit close enough to what they want to expect on meet day. So how do you deal, like you're a veteran in the sport, you've been competing for a long time, but how do you deal with that mentally? Because I've struggled with that myself where I know I put over 370, but I felt like I had to put over 360 doing prep in order to
Mhm.
guarantee pulling 370. And funny enough, I actually didn't pull 370. I pulled 352 on the day. But how do
Yeah.
you deal with that?
Yeah. So sometimes, so one, I realize that training is just training, right? It is important, yes. It is indicative of what you'll be able to do at a competition, yes. However, it's not the whole story, right? So you have to sometimes zoom out and look at things on a macro level. And some people get freaked out by this. I don't personally. I'm very much a long-term thinker, and I'm a very much a methodical planner. I think things out, years in advance, and it shows in my personal life, my professional life, my competing. Um, but with all that said, I consider the context in which the training is in, right? So it's not just, oh, well, training hasn't been going so well and I haven't been lifting as heavy as I want to lately. But okay, well, 4 weeks out from the meet, I pulled 810 for 2 reps, which was a calibrated conventional PR, right? So I was like, okay, so my strength is high. I know my strength is high, and I know that 4 weeks, you know, 3.5 weeks, whatever, of kind of sandbagging a little bit, taking a bit easier and recovering is not going to zap all that strength. Like that strength's not just going to, magically disappear. I'd like to think that, on a macro level, I'm a much more formidable man and person and lifter where all my strength won't just disappear, right? Over 3 or 4 weeks, you know? So that's one way, right? So to look at the macro and consider the context in which your training is in. And another thing on meet day, you also just have to kind of, sometimes play it by ear and take it, lift by lift, attempt by attempt, and just adjust, as you need. So like I was planning to pull conventional because I wasn't really training sumo, but I realized, on the day after the big squats, that, conventional, while I could do it, like I could pull the weight and the weights were moving fast in the warm-up room, like faster than they have in probably a couple months. So I know my strength was high, but it was extremely painful, like towards the top of the lift. And I'm like, well, I can muscle through this and try to get one attempt in over 800 plus, but that's all I'll have is one. So I'd have to really make it strategically count. Or I can do sumo, which is way less painful, and I can, have a chance at actually doing two over 800 and winning, the title or securing a title, right? So that was kind of what I opted to do. So at 4 Reds, I switched over to sumo and then competed with sumo.
Quick
So
question.
another thing
Sorry,
for
boys.
me,
Sorry, boys.
yeah,
Just one
what
quick
happened?
question, right? Why,
Yeah,
do you struggle with pulling sumo in training?
if I do it too often, yes.
Okay.
See, that's just a hint from God to say you should never pull sumo. Nobody should pull
Hey,
sumo.
it
Everyone should
depends, all right?
always pull conventional.
Pull it the way God intended. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I've had this conversation with a few. Like, you're gonna go pick something up off the floor. You're not gonna set up with your sumo. Do you know what I mean? You're just gonna pull it conventional. Ain't that right,
Yeah, you're
Mo?
just gonna pick that shit up.
Some of us are not gifted. Please.
Yeah.
These boys can't even pick themselves up off the floor at this point in time.
I will say though, another thing that helps me psychologically for these meets is the fact that I know that I can do sumo or conventional. The fact that I know that I can bench close grip or wide grip. The fact that I know that I can squat high bar or low bar. So I'm pretty proficient at all of them. Right. I'm better at some things than others, or more consistent with some things than others, but I'm proficient with all of them. I can compete with any of those 6 at any time, pretty much, unless barring an injury and I have to do something else.
You know, your last comp, you had some issues with the deadlift.
Yep.
What issues did you face? What was the problem, and how did you rectify it coming into this meet? What was the difference in approach to this meet?
It was a little bit less aggressive. In the last prep, I trained sumo, right? So I trained it a lot. And the training for it actually went pretty good. But on the meet day, like the weights were flying, right? Warm up room and everything. But once we got on the platform, my first attempt was fine. I do the second attempt, and my warm ups were indicative of me probably having the strength to do like 860 to 880, right? Like there's some days where I know it's there, and it was there that day. But yeah, so when I did my second deadlift, both of my calves cramped, which was bizarre, which made my walkout like kind of wonky, which has actually never happened to me before. So that was really weird. So the weight was like 826. And to do what I wanted to do, like to break the record, I was like, I went to Marcellus. I'm just like, hey, man, do you trust me? He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. And he's like, you want to do conventional? I'm like, yeah, let's do conventional for the third one. I know I'm strong today regardless. So we hit 826. It moves fine. And that's pretty much what happened there. But no, the training was actually pretty good for it. On the day, it was just like a weird thing that like never really happened, sort of an anomaly, one-off event. Which was unfortunate because the training was going so good for it for the most part. So, I mean, even in training, I was taking jumps from 717 to 826, like normally with sumo. Like it was just a normal jump. Like it wasn't anything I had to get hyped up for or whatever. So, at the meet when that happened, it was like there was a shock factor to it. So I was like, wait, I don't want to risk this happening again. And I lock it out because I know I'm going to lock it out again, but I don't want it to be a wobbly or janky thing and then it doesn't count and it sucks. Let me just pull it conventional. I know I'm strong, and then it's done. Yeah.
See, I take big pulls on deadlifts. I'd like to think I take big pulls on deadlifts, but you're taking the piss with that fucking that jump.
Ashton's jumps are they're not normal.
You got people's totals in one jump. Like what's the thinking behind it, the logic behind it? Is there a reason why you did such a massive jump on that deadlift?
Was it 37 or 40 kilos? The jump.
At the meet? Oh, at the meet at nationals, I jumped from 325 to 372.5. So it was technically 37.
That's ridiculous.
Rather than 40. I mean, if you jumped 40, it would have the same outcome. But yeah, no. So for me, by the time I get to that weight, I know I pretty much know, right, what's gonna happen for the most part. Like I've been doing this for so long that when I move a certain weight, like I can like with probably like 95% accuracy, like, deduce like what's going to happen when I put whatever weight onto the bar. So I knew after I hit 717 for the opener, I'm like, okay, I can hit 821 for the second or 826, put whatever on to secure like a fat total, to secure PR total, and to push the other guys, right? And so that's what we did. So we put on 821, which was the perfect number. That's actually my second attempt deadlift that won me the previous USAPL Nationals too. Fun fact. And I did 821 and moved pretty well. I was like, oh, I got more in me. So my third attempt, we did 856 and it moved fine, honestly. Like I still had more left over. But the problem there, I think more so was, so it was a 2-to-1 call. And like watching the footage, like it kind of looked like there was like a wobble. But it also kind of looked like the center of the bar didn't really go down. I'm not sure if there was like downward movement, but it did like wobble. So I was like, I guess that probably was what the call was for, and like knees or something. But my knees felt fine, so I'm not too sure what happened there. But I think that was a fair call. Like 2-to-1 either way, I think would have been a fair call. So, so I don't really have any gripes about that. But still, 856 moved pretty good, and I'm like, well, yeah. I can like tighten this up a bit and. Yeah.
I was just going to quickly throw some random facts in here for our listeners and also the boys on the podcast. Ashton, do you know you've done, well, obviously you know, because you've been, when we say Ashton is a veteran, because you're a monster in this sport. A lot of people look at you and go, hey, I want to be Ashton Rouska, but a lot of people don't understand the amount of work and time has gone into your success so far. You've done well over 54 meets. right?
Yeah.
The only person I can think of that comes close is maybe Tony Cliff. So when you're talking about your experience with meet day, the confidence you have with your big jumps and knowing what's there and being able to micro or look at your training from an outside perspective and not get thrown off by external variables or injuries, it's very impressive to hear and listen to.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's taken time to develop, right? It's taken time to develop. And like you said, it took like years of work and years of practice and kind of really learning what my body is like and what it responds to, what it doesn't respond to. And we have a much better idea now of what that is versus, 5 years ago versus 7 years ago versus 10 years ago when I did my first meet in Anchorage. Um, but yeah, no, yeah, just to speak to that, yeah, I mean, I've been competing a long time. I've done it so many times. I kind of have, I kind of know what to expect for the most part. And I mean, sure, unpredictable things still happen, but when they happen, I'm less shaken up by them because I can adjust on the fly, right? So, if my calves cramp for sumo, which has never happened in my entire life, oh, I can just pull it conventional. It's only 826. I got this. I've done it. I've done it before. I say it's only 826. This is a shitload of weight, but like I've done this before. I can do this, right? Or, at this last meet, oh man, my back's killing me. I know I can probably hit one attempt over 800 on conventional, but it's going to hurt and it won't be pretty, but I'll be able to do it. Or I can do sumo and give myself the best chance of winning on the day, which to me on that day, winning mattered more than, pride. So I'm like, well, let me do what it takes. Let me do what it takes to win. So I adjusted on the fly, and it went almost seamless, minus one red light.
Yeah. And I was
Mo, are you taking notes? What to do?
Well,
what
actually,
to do when you cramp?
There's another. Well, that's why I'm doing conventional. I'm doing
Yeah.
conventional now. I've managed to get to 340. It's not impressive, but it's something.
I've seen you training conventional. I actually think that's going to be good for you. Like even if
I
you
hate
still
it.
compete sumo,
I hate it so much.
Yo, bro,
but you got to do what you hate, right?
come on. What are you on about? You hate it? Heresy.
On a serious note, though,
Yeah.
I think it's going to help your sumo a lot in the long run.
Yeah.
Being
I
able
guess
to
so.
do both.
Yeah.
No, for sure. Like my best dude at this meet. You know how heavy I went on sumo before this meet? 661 in like 2 or 3 months. And that was like one time. Like,
okay.
and I did 856 like on the day, right? Like, dude,
Yeah.
like I'm telling you, like there is something about I think, training conventional and just loading sort of, your body in that particular pattern and way. Sure, it's not like maybe it varies person to person, but I think for you specifically, that may have even been like kind of a missing link in your training. Like that might actually really be helpful for you.
Yeah, so we've done it now. We push conventional. It's definitely going to stay in the program because, like you, I actually have to train sumo once a week. I can't do 2 times a week because my body always breaks. So I think actually a better alternative would be actually to do conventional and sumo going forward. So we're looking at doing that definitely.
I think it
good.
helps
Like
a lot of people. I think conventional helps a lot of sumo pullers. I don't think sumo helps conventional pullers, but conventional definitely helps sumo pullers. Like I've seen some monster sumo pullers that are pulling conventional as a variation, and it's just up, 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 up.
Yeah, it helps. Even if you don't do conventional directly, if you do like stiff leg or RDLs, like whatever, right? Just the pattern, right?
Yeah.
That really tends that I just noticed that tends to help people more than it hurts people most of the time.
Okay.
And yeah, it's very hard to get that carryover to conventional from sumo, but I will say it's useful to be able to do sumo if your back is just, beat to shit, right? And you got to still deadlift somehow with the knee. So in that sense, it was useful, but it doesn't like pushing sumo doesn't really help me to, I think, increase my, conventional max the same way, vice versa, the same effect that I see. Yeah.
I mean, me personally, especially this prep leading to the Euros, we have included conventional and sumo. I can almost say my sumo is almost effortless because I'm back into conventional so much. When it comes to my days, my primary day where I have to do sumo, literally like I'm just pulling the way I have to pull. And then I don't need that, that rest time we normally have like 3-4 minutes before another set. No, I can do 2 minutes rest time for sumo. I'm fine. So it's just that's the convention that's given me that little bit of help as well. Ash, I think this is me. I'm going to ask in terms of like, of course, I'm going to move us a little bit further in terms of the meet day itself. I don't know if the boys have got any other questions.
But before you jump on,
yeah, also one little one. Yeah,
I wanted to touch on Mo's statement. Right, you've done nearly as many meets as Tony Cliff, right? You know what? I don't know if it pisses you off, but it pisses me off when I see people online saying, "Oh, what about the travel? You know, what about this? What about that? What about
Oh,
these
dude,
fucking
yeah.
externals, that external? Do you think these people are just like ignorant of the fact that you've already competed in the IPF, you've already done this many
It's
amount of
Yeah.
every
meets,
meet.
or do you
He
think
does.
these
Yeah.
people are just knobs?
Most of them just don't have a clue. Like, and right, they're ignorant, so I can't be, totally upset at them. And people have their opinions, and that's fine. But yeah, they tend to be wrong, and they just don't know. Like, they don't know. I mean, even when it comes to like meets and training, is he washed? Is he this? Is he that? Like, they just really don't understand like the context. And again, they fail to zoom out at the macro, like I talked about earlier. And when you fail to do that, and you only look at the micro, and you're only focused on what's directly in front of you and not what's in front of you or behind you at all, then yeah, you'll lead to assumptions that lead to failure. And that's exactly what happened. So do I take personal offense to it? Rarely. And it's just funny to watch. Like I think a lot of people just don't really sort of functionally understand again the macro, and I think that's where a lot of their ill-informed assumptions come from. Like when it comes to traveling and such, like yeah, last year I traveled to Korea. I flew 12 hours, and in the midst of a very rigorous doctoral program, and competed with Keenan Lee, and I didn't even know he was going to be at that meet until I got off the plane,
Yeah, they set
or
you
I
up.
didn't know he
Yeah,
was going to be as
that was
strong
a
as he
setup.
was, right?
That was a
So I had
setup.
to quickly adjust.
They
What's that?
set you up there, man. They set you up. That was a setup. I know that.
Yeah, probably. And but yeah, like like I had no idea that's what I was in for, that kind of dogfight. But that's what happened. And that meet, let's see, my second deadlift, I passed out because
Yeah.
of like a weird way that I braced. Like that's happened to me maybe twice ever. But then I got my third deadlift, which was a meet conventional PR of 843, and that won the meet. Travel didn't prevent me from doing that. Back in 2014 when I went to Orda, Hungary. I competed at the Junior Equip World Championship back then. I skipped my second deadlift. I do a conventional PR on my third deadlift, and I win the meet by body weight. Travel didn't zap me for that meet. If it did, theoretically, I should have been able to deadlift the PR like I did. So, just all those things.
I think when it comes to these things about traveling and the external factors, a lot of these people that make these noise on social media about it is the people that actually never competed and they never experienced them. They just talk because they're listening to someone saying, "Oh yeah, travel has affected me," and then they're thinking, "Oh yeah, travel does affect people." Reality, don't get me wrong, Ash, it's true. Some people
It
get affected.
is to an extent, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
was gonna say to an extent it is true. Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't expect that everybody will fall in that same category. You know what I mean? No,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's not like
I,
that.
Yeah.
I, I think the one thing that really pisses me off, and we were talking about externals, and people talk about externals, and people are like, "Oh, these are hard and that hard." But like for me and for Ashton, like the externals being in the military that it brings and the difficulties that brings trumps 99.999% of other people's externals. Like, for example, going for a tab, we call it, or you call it a ruck, going for a run, military
Mm-hmm.
PT, this sort of stuff. Like, for me, it sapped the shit out of me. Like, you a full day of like training, whatever you're doing, going for a run, and then coming back and expecting to get a session in. Shit like that takes the beats the shit out of you. How do you deal with that aspect of training yourself?
No, absolutely. That can be brutal. And like especially when I was a cadet, like during training, right? People like, oh, you were a cadet, but no, like actually like I did, let's see, I did 3 ruck marathons. I did like plenty of like long runs. I'd wake up pretty much every single day and ruck or run, do PT in the morning. I would go to school for, however many hours in the day, and then I would, go to powerlifting in the evening, and I'd be there all night. And then, when I was president of the team, I'd stay. I'd be the first person there and the last person to leave pretty much every day. And it was just kind of like that was just sort of my life then. And even in graduate school, where it wasn't necessarily as PT heavy per se, the demands professionally were just so extensive that I honestly think sometimes that was worse than doing all the PT because it was just so psychologically and mentally and emotionally demanding and exhausting that it's just really difficult sometimes to keep up like with your training and always give your best, but you make do and you adjust. um I again, I kind of, to handle all of this, to answer your question, I kind of, rationalized to an extent in my head, like, hey, like, this is difficult, this is hard, but, like, you're built for this and you're designed to do this. And for me, a lot of it is psychological, right? Like, is actually kind of psyching myself up a little bit and, genuinely believing that no matter what the world or the army or whatever throws at me, that I can handle it, I can adapt, and I can still train and I can still win. And that's been huge for me, right? It's kind of just this mentality of, no matter what happens, like, I'm still coming and, I can still do this. And I know it sounds kind of simple and maybe a little cliche to some, but that's really what it is. It's like sort of just an indomitable will to keep pushing and to keep getting better and to keep striving, no matter what your circumstances are, no matter how much pain you're in, no matter how little you've slept, to me, while all those things are factors that matter, in the moment, in my mind, they don't matter, and there's something bigger waiting for me. So that's just sort of the energy and the tenacity that I like to take with me into a lot of my training and my competitions and such. I mean, even I was a 4-time collegiate All-American in the U.S. powerlifting, and I won 3 of my collegiate national championships. And within like 3 weeks of those, I was usually running like 26 miles, like in a desert somewhere, like and through like mountains and all this other crazy stuff. And just training really hard. But it was all necessary, I think, for my development as a competitor, as a man, as a soldier. So I tend to welcome these challenges more than I shy away from them, right? And I think having that mentality is also very helpful. But physiologically, yes, it is going to zap you sometimes, and it's going to suck sometimes, and you won't always be able to recover optimally per se.
No, I definitely relate to that. So I had one question, Ashton. Looking at your
Yes, sir.
history, you've competed a lot of times. So you're a veteran beyond veterans, right? You've never actually limited yourself to a weight class. I wanted to understand your mentality behind this. I don't know if it comes from a point of, hey, I'm always chasing the competition, or I know the better version of myself is not here yet. So you started off way down when you first did your first meet at, I don't know, 16, 15. You started off as a very, very light 82. From there, you moved into the 90s, then the 93s, then the 100s, 105, and now even 110. So you get a lot of lifters that will actually shrink and hold themselves back for 3-4 years, very tied to one weight class. What's motivated you not to be tied to the weight class, but rather to chase performance, or whether you're chasing performance or just what was comfortable for you in the moment?
Yeah, no, I was, most of the time I was chasing competition, right? So at the end of the day, for me, the most important thing is to hang with and, go toe to toe with the best in the world. And, if they weren't in my weight class, I'd go up a weight class, and if I had to lose a meet, and in order to improve and get better and beat the person that beat me, then that's a fate that I would accept,
Yep. That's you placed 9th and then gone to 1st within the next meet. So that's something you've 100% done. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done it many times. And same thing with the 105 weight class. My first nationals at 105, I got 3rd place, which was not the outcome I was expecting, but I worked my ass off. I trained really hard and I got stronger. And then the next 105 nationals, I won, and, same thing with like, even 110, like, sure, I technically I didn't lose any meets at 110, but, I was competing with 2 guys that were just absolute monsters. And, people thought that I wasn't going to win. Like a lot of people thought I wouldn't really win, which, was fine with me. But at the same point in time, it kind of almost created this underdog dynamic again, where I kind of felt like, okay, I'm kind of like, the small guy here in this weight class. And I don't say that to be like ironic. I'm not like small, but it's kind of what you feel like, right? And I'm like, I got something to prove.
Yeah.
And I love that feeling because you never feel more alive and you're just hungry.
Ash, let me ask, in terms of, you say small guy, how tall are you?
Like 5'9", average height.
A lot taller than you, Jurins.
Oh shit.
Everyone
I'm a pretty normal size dude. Like,
saw.
Nah, Jurins is built like a 66.
Everyone saw that GQ. What was it? The write-up that you had where you told them to put 5'7", where we know it's 5'6".
I didn't tell them. What the hell?
Man, he just added on 5 inches to his height.
Anyway, so Ash, let's move now onto the midday itself. So, thanks again. The conversation's flowing really great. The
Of
midday, I
course.
just want to touch on the squat in terms of like your. This is again the mental side of it. I don't so much worry. Want to talk about your openers and attempts and all of that. It's just that I want to pick up little bit about your mental side of thinking. A
Sure.
105 guy can go and attempt 800 over 800 pound twice in a single meet. How do you prepare for that? Because 800 pound, for our listener that don't know what 800 pound is 362.5 kilos. If I'm right, am I right, guys? Right.
Mhm.
So,
It's
so
it's it's within that it's within that margin of
Yeah,
error. Yeah.
365. Yeah.
So, how do you prepare your mental state, the mental side for you thinking, okay, I'm gonna have to attempt over 800 pound twice in this meet? How do you prepare for that?
Well, I really don't worry about it a lot before the meet, right? So before the meet, like, I'm enjoying myself, hanging out with friends, watching the lifting, being a spectator and just enjoying myself and not freaking out. That's the first step, right? I think that helps me a lot because if I do freak out about it, my arousal is high all week. I don't eat, I just wait, and then, that's going to affect your performance, right? So I just don't freak out about it until the day. And that's when I start to, then I'll worry about it, right? So that's the mentality. That's one piece of the mentality I have. And then on the day, to kind of answer your question more directly, what I usually do is before those, so I warm up. I warm up with intention, and then when I get to the attempts themselves, I just get really angry.
Makes
So,
sense.
this is the secret.
Yeah,
So that's it. Indy, I
I
want
was
you.
yeah.
I was
I
gonna
get like
ask
no.
one question. In
Yeah,
regards to
go
your
ahead.
squats, right? The obviously 380.5 as a basically as a 105 is insane right now. In terms as you, and then a long gap, and then there's Anatolii, and then there's a long gap, and then there's everyone else for squatting right now. What waist size are you for trousers? Because your
Waist
torso
Bro,
size?
is thick.
bro, what could, yo, Ashton, don't answer this, bro. Don't answer
No,
this,
no, it's
he's
fine.
making a doll. He's
It's
making a
fine.
Rouska doll for some juju, some weird, like.
Because
No, my
I'm looking
waist.
at Ashton cooking right now. I'm thinking your torso is just thick.
My waist actually is not that big at all. My waist is actually very small. So
What
like
is it?
my abdomen here, so my chest and my shoulders are extremely broad, like 50 plus inches. And then here it's like still thick and muscular. And at my actual waist, it's a lot further in than my like shoulders. It's like probably 30 like four or so.
34. Oh, okay. Oh,
At
okay,
like
okay.
well that was at like 238, 240. So it
Okay.
might be a little bit, it might be like 33-ish now. But yeah.
Shit, fair enough
Mo's
then.
gonna start asking you where your family's from and stuff like that in a second as well. It's
I,
just,
I think that's a normal question. That's a genuine question there, Ash. In terms of like your lineage, have you got some African in you? Because I know all the American, you call yourself African American, but forget the African side. I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there is African in my lineage, probably about 400 years ago.
That's not Nigerian. Right? I say maybe it's Congolese, right?
No, yeah, I think it's pretty much just like the coast of West Africa, mostly like different countries apparently.
Okay.
But I don't really know how accurate that all is.
That's definitely
It's probably Nigerian, to be honest
well,
with you.
that's
It's
there we
fine.
go. Here comes the conversation. Just
And then
I'm waiting on this conversation.
and then my other side, so my last name is Rouska, right? So that's not
Yeah,
clearly not like a normal American name. So that
yeah.
actually is Czech.
Ah, okay. Czech
Yeah.
Republic. Oh, nice. There's-
Yep.
so Czech
Well,
Republic.
that would explain the big fucking squats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of those details.
What's your approach to? Obviously, we've seen all your main lifts and stuff like that online. What's your approach to your accessories and things like that? You and Marcellus, I'm guessing you do some sort of like collaborative training. I'm guessing. Do you
Look
That
push
at
your
looks nice.
accessories and things as well?
Yes,
Way more
I do a
calories than Juris can
lot.
handle.
I do a lot of accessories, man. So actually, I probably push accessories more aggressively than most powerlifters do. So part of my accessories is training for PT, right? And then another part of my accessories is really just like to ensure that I stay and get more muscular as I gain weight or as I maintain the weight and I recomposition and my body fat gradually over time gets lower and lower. So yeah, so each day, especially for upper body, my accessories are a lot more kind of aggressive with those because with the lower body compound movements, those are kind of really whole body compound movements, and those I think take more out of you, physiologically than like a heavy bench press would. Um, but with that said, I still do hit my lower body accessories pretty aggressively too. And I also kind of, scale it, and it depends on how close or how far I am away from the meet, a big meet that is. So as I get closer to a meet like that last 4 or 6 weeks, I'll start to decrease the accessories a little bit, but I'll still always keep some of them in there just to, keep the body moving. Not moving is death. So I always, kind of keep that in. But when I'm a little bit further away from meet, I'll do a lot more accessories for sure. I'll train those a bit more. I'll train those really aggressively, actually. And I do all kinds of stuff, really. I mean, there's a lot. Like I couldn't really sit here and name all of them. I probably wouldn't remember all of them. But
what are your favorites?
Yeah.
Favorites to hit?
Favorite accessories? So I actually really like curling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I've curled 215 pounds, I think, for like 2 or 3 reps.
What the fuck, man? Come on.
So I have a really good curl. Yeah,
dude.
reps, 2 reps.
I curl 14 kg dumbbells, and I just leave it at that. So...
Oh no, man! You gotta.
Indy's doing the maths.
I'm doing the maths, though. I like
that's
that.
97 kilograms.
Now, so you curl Jurins' bench?
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought you were about to say like you carry Jurins because that's not even my body weight.
That's more than your body weight.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
No,
but curls. So I also like weighted pull-ups. Weighted pull-ups are really good.
Yeah.
Those just seem to help everything, like all 3 of my lifts and just
Do you
everything,
like
and I just get more muscular.
Overhand grip, underhand, or close? What kind of
all
grip
3?
Stuff?
I'll do all 3.
Okay.
I'll rotate between all 3 of them. Yeah, I think all 3 of them are good. Lat pull downs I like a lot too, because if you do them intentionally, you don't have to do a shitload of weight. But if you do them intentionally, and you keep your spine relatively neutral, for me that actually helps to kind of get my back, sort of. I don't know. I feel better when I do the big 3 when I do that. So that's an interesting thing that I've noticed. So this past prep where my back was strained a bit, every session after that strain, I would do like 2 or 3 sets of lat pull downs every single day. And I would do like 120 pounds or so. I would do them behind my head, keep my spine relatively neutral, and my back would feel tremendously better when I trained like every day after that.
Wow. See, for me, pull-ups, that's a life skill. Like, there's so many powerlifters that can't do a single pull-up. And I'm like, you need to reevaluate your life. Because, no, listen, it's a life skill. If you can't hold your body weight, you're useless.
I would like, because there's 2 ways I look at this, because I came from a bodybuilding background, and I've always loved contraction. That's always been my focus. So I've never really pushed heavy. Actually, to be honest with you, until I started talking more with Indiraj here in the group chat, a lot of my accessories were really focused on contraction rather than pushing heavy. So I would do sets of 15s to 20, sometimes even 25, super set, volume set, just put in that volume again, a very good pump. But talking about accessories, I want to, because I've seen this, I think in America, I noticed a lot of the lifters over there prioritize accessories. They like the muscle mass. It's from your American football background, school days, push accessories, get some more muscle on your chest, arms, legs. It translates well to football. Here in the UK, to be honest with you, they don't like accessories. They do not like building muscle mass. They seem to hate it. And I want to talk to you boys and get your view on how much accessories play the importance in your training in terms of building the muscle mass, relying on that foundation for the future, and what advice you give to younger lifters, especially those who are starting powerlifting now. How aggressive push accessories and everything.
Younger lift, push them hard, man. You're young, you can heal. Like it's fine. Push them hard. Develop the muscle mass. Get the muscle mass. Build, the base and the foundation that's necessary. When kids tell me they want to be like me or they want to total 950 kilos or 900 kilos or 1,000 kilos. I'm like, dude, you're not going to total 1,000 kilos with 14-inch arms. You're not going to total it with like a 36-inch chest. Like you gotta beef up. You got to build muscle mass. You got to get bigger, and that's going to allow you the base and the foundation to eventually hit these more ridiculous numbers. Like from 13 years old all the way up, I've focused on building muscle and getting bigger and stronger. And it doesn't always necessarily mean heavier, but when I say bigger and stronger, I mean, a higher, muscle to body fat ratio, more muscle, and just overall just being more of a physical, formidable force, right? When people see me at powerlifting meets, and this is not to brag, but they just go, oh shit, that guy's, freaking
Yeah.
stacked, right? Whereas you see some other guys, they come in and they're, granted they may be good powerlifters, but they're a little bit on the lankier side. They don't look as jacked. And it's like that guy is really strong because of how he, based on, considering how he looks, right?
Yeah.
Where they look at me and they're just like, no, there's no question. That guy is strong, right? And there's just something that it does for your confidence and your ego, in my opinion, when you walk into a room and everyone just sort of notices. And it's a thing, And
Yeah.
I think I think guys, I think men, I think actually love that shit for the most.
I'm going to add a caveat on that as well, because I want to jump in on the accessories thing. No, it's not even a caveat. It's a supporting statement. Like for me,
Yes.
as you get bigger, as your loads get heavier, there's only so many times you can hold that. Like, if, for example, for me, I need to deadlift once a week. I maybe deadlift lighter banded the second time. If I deadlift twice a week, I'm fucked. So for me to get the same relative training intensity, I need to push my accessories.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
absolutely,
as your weights get heavier, you can't just maintain the same amount of like reps and sets as a lighter lifter. Like if for example, if you're squatting 800 pounds, you can't squat 800 pounds 3 times a week. Goodbye hips, goodbye legs, goodbye back.
Yeah,
so
no
to
way.
get that work capacity through your body, you're going to have to do accessories, and it's an easy way of putting work through your body without loading your lower back. I can't load my lower back that much anymore, but I still want to pull 400. How am I going to do that? I deadlift heavy once a week and I smashed the fucking shit out of my hammies. If I tried, a few people have jumped into like leg sessions with me and stuff, and they do one session, they never come back again because they're like, "Oh, that hurts." I genuinely, I can't remember a day I've not had hamstring DOMs over the last 10 weeks. Every single day, I have hamstring DOMs, bro.
But that's what you want though. Like to your point, like as you become a bigger guy or you get bigger and stronger, a lot stronger. In Jurins' case, like he's really strong for an 83, right? Like world class strength. Like you have to adjust and change.
Do not use Jurins. Jurins does upright rows with 15 pounds. It is awful.
It was honestly,
it was the most disgusting
genuinely
thing I've ever
made
seen
me
in my
sad
life.
yesterday watching him do his accessories.
Both of you, I'm gonna block you. Right?
So
15 kg,
wait,
15 kg lat.
Does he just look like that based off like is that just your leverage? Do you just look like that? Like
it's just genetics.
Naturally?
Genetics.
Yeah.
He eats like 12 calories a day and then does like these weird fucking light accessories.
Okay, I see.
Ash, my ancestors were the gorillas from the mountains, so we. I mean, what I'm saying, Ash, right? These two, right? Be on my side. Take my side here. Accessory has never really been something I've done in the past. I've never really done accessory. This is the first time in my life where I've included accessories in my program. It doesn't mean everything I'm doing them right. Every time I do them, these guys give me a hard time. I didn't actually expect me to carry on doing it.
I was giving him advice. I'm like, when you're doing your lat work, he's like holding it all on his buys with 15 kg. I'm like, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, 15K. Yeah, no, man, you gotta, in my opinion, I think for most people, it does pay actually to, push your accessories pretty hard. And choosing which accessories, to push hard, which ones will give you more bang for your buck, those are things that you should determine like based off of your leverages, based off of like what your needs are, based off of your weaknesses. You kind of make a decision based off of all those things, which ones to prioritize, and then have some accessories where you don't necessarily push as hard, but you have them in there just to get that sort of additional stimulus. And again, for bigger guys, when you can't lift super heavy all the time, what do? Well, you do what you can for the week for that lift, and then you get that work in through other movements and other means that you can heal from. That way you're still sort of pushing for an overall, gain in muscle, gain in strength, etc.
Guys, I'm going to ask this because out of all four of us, I'm the smallest guy here, right? So in terms of what you guys mentioned about, please, you mentioned about you people can't squat maybe 3 times a week. You can't do a back-to-back squat. You can't deadlift 2 times or 3 times a week. You only do once. But on the other hand, someone like me, the way I train, I'm listening to you guys. Do I do something wrong? Because I do all of these things you guys are saying you don't do. That's what I do. I squat 3 times a week, back to back. You know what I mean? I deadlift 3 times a week, sometimes 4. Do you know what I mean? But and the reality is, when you ask me about my recovery, I've never had an issue with my recovery, even though I'm 34 years old. But my recovery's always been on.
in that case, if you don't have an issue with recovery, a lot of times the most optimal way to improve on a lift is to just push the lift direct, right? Especially if you can get the volume in, and you can do it, and it's tolerable, and you can do that. If you can get away with it, then sure, it's not a bad thing necessarily. I don't think, and there's more than one approach, to training for everyone, right? I'm kind of more so speaking to generalities, saying that in general, this is kind of what happens as you get a lot stronger. But there are, rare exceptions to that where, your training may not need to be as adjusted as some others. I know for myself, over these 10 years, my training has adjusted pretty substantially. The one thing that's remained constant though is I've been doing like heavy accessory work from the start. So that's also kind of a fundamental difference there. But honestly, if you can do the big three and you're getting stronger, you're gaining still, and you're doing everything, then it's really not bad. But I would still even say do accessories and push them a bit harder because
I am pushing. That's why I look at it. I'm, you know what? I've been doing accessory and my body weight. I'm at 86 now. I'm at 86 kilo from an 82. So I mean, that's a lot.
Did you drink?
You know what he
2 kilos
does?
of water?
He's bought a Peloton bike, and them Pilates weights. The ones that you put on your wrists, and then you go for a run with. He does his accessories with those. I've seen him.
Oh God.
But no, listen. The thing is, like Ashton said, there's many ways of doing things, and at the end of the day, I know people say weight is relative, but weight is also absolute. Like, being able to like rep off on 800 pounds, even if you're that much stronger than someone, is going to do more to that person's body than repping off on 300 kg.
Yeah.
So if it works for you, keep doing it. It just doesn't work for me. My lower back wouldn't take it.
Well, it's also going to be leverage based too, right? So Jurins is how tall is Jurins?
5'7".
5'6". Let's give him 5'6.5".
Okay, well let's just take one, like height is just one factor, right? Like there's other factors obviously, like there's limb length, there's the length of like your femurs, there's a lot of other things, right? Like there are guys that are shorter than Jurins that have terrible leverages for squat, which rarely ever happens, but it does happen, right? And then there's guys that are extremely tall that might actually not have the worst squat leverages in the world. I mean, it does, there's a lot of variables and factors to consider. Like I know, like for me, in terms of leverage for bench press, it's not the greatest. I have a lot of upper body muscle mass, right? But my leverage for bench press specifically is not like the greatest in the world. Like I can incline bench a lot, and then it's like not super far behind my flat bench, just by virtue of sort of leverage. But and so okay, so let me just like get this out of the way real quick. So I think in terms of importance of powerlifting, the most important things, number one is leverage, number two is muscle mass, and number three is technique, in that order. So I think your leverage is the most important thing in powerlifting. Like if you don't have leverages to be a good powerlifter, it's going to be very difficult to be like the best powerlifter. Like your leverages don't have to be godlike, but they should be at least pretty good. Number two is muscle mass, right? So mass moves mass. If you have muscle mass and you have quality mass, you're going to just simply be able to move more weight than a person who weighs the same with the same leverages that doesn't have the same amount of muscle mass, right? And then number three, technique, being able to sort of maximize your technique in any way that you can to lift the most weight possible. So, in consideration of all those things, your leverages are what they are, right? You're kind of given them, and, aside from gaining weight or losing weight or gaining muscle to manipulate your leverages, your leverages are kind of relatively static, right? So you can gain more muscle mass though. You can continue, to refine and improve your technique based off of, your muscle mass and your leverage. So you have to kind of, there's some things that you can't necessarily change, but you have to focus on what you can change and what you can work on. And I think accessories, kind of tying this all together, is a big component of addressing, the muscle mass thing, especially, which behind leverages is, I think, the most important thing in power, having actual quality muscle mass. You look at a lot of the top lifters, 83, 93, 105, even like some of the 125s that are coming up now and 120s. And even looking at Jesus, the super heavyweight, and he lives here in San Antonio, by the way. Like when you look at those guys, like a lot of those guys in the smaller weight classes, of course, they have like a certain amount of kind of muscle mass to hang out and be around at the top level for the most part. There's exceptions, but generally speaking, a lot of those dudes are jacked, right? To an extent. So just kind of all things to think about and consider. And then in 93s, you kind of see an interesting combination where you see leverage really play out a lot, because a lot of the top 93s are like, 5'5" or 5'6". And then, they weigh 205 or 200 and they have good muscle mass, but they also have extremely good leverages, like for either two or all three of the lifts, right? So, I think of Gavin Aiden, I think of Kaiko, I think of like those guys, like a good combination between leverage, having muscle, and having like pretty refined technique for the most part too. So just kind of to neatly tie all that together. Those are kind of my thoughts on that.
I was going to say, just hop in on what you said about muscle mass and leverages, because I'm 6'1", and I think the only reason why, and I'm 6'1", built like a sprinter, basically. I've got long femurs made for long strides. And the only reason I'm
Right.
able to squat anything decent is just because I packed on a lot of muscle mass on my legs. And that's one thing I'm actually very happy. When I started bodybuilding, quote unquote, but I started with the fascination of growing my legs. So unlike most people who were focused on growing their arms and chest, mine was always the legs. And I found out that over the last few years, there are a lot of tall 105s in the UK, 6'1", 6'2". And every single time they message me in the DMs, I'm like, your legs need to be a lot bigger, unless you're not going to get anywhere. You can have a massive deadlift, you can have an okay bench, but honestly, your squat will be 270 negative minus if your legs don't get any
Yep.
bigger. Yeah.
And as well as I do, man, that a 270 squat and 105 just is not even close to being enough.
No, that's rep work, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, right.
on the 83 as repping those one. If you want to have a 270, 280 score, come on, you might just stay home. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not gonna you can compete to compete and get better and do your own thing, but like you won't win, obviously.
Yeah, you won't be the king. So I mean, guys, I know we've covered quite a lot here today. So Ash, I think I'm going to move on to the next topic, which was you coming over, right? And a lot of talk has been in the media, and we're all excited about it. And I'm sure you've spoken about it in the few podcasts you have done. And me personally, I'm excited because me and you've been talking about this for years, right? Almost I've been
For quite a while now. Yeah.
It comes to lure you to IPF. So what changed? What changed?
Yeah. So before I could even think about doing a world championship or doing IPF, like with Bob and Keenan out there and knowing they were out there and knowing that, if I had just went over, and I tried to go over too early to try to avoid that conflict, I just, I would have felt like a coward, and I'm not a coward. So I'm not going to run, from a competition that intense. So, that's one reason why it's been delayed for a while in particular. But I have been wanting to go back and do like an IPF Open Championship and win an open one, that is an open law one. And I really did want to put my hat in for Sheffield. And when I heard, the thing that kind of solidified it for me was when I heard about the World Games in 2025. Like I really want to do the World Games. Like I would really love to go and compete there. It would just be, a huge honor. And I think it would be a great way to sort of culminate my time competing as a powerlifter. And that might even be like my last really big one. Granted that I can do that one. So we'll kind of see what happens, but I think that's a really good way to sort of be able to kind of close out all of this stuff, at least at a high level.
That makes total sense to me. Again, I mean, the second question for me was, yes, you're following. You said in the beginning here is all about chasing competition for you, right? And as far as I'm concerned, I know what I've heard so far, and I've spoken to the lifters themselves, like Keenan himself, he can't move to the IPF. So that competition on that side for you is almost staying behind. And on the other hand, of course, there's Bob that potentially coming in about on the weight class above. But is it the motivation just the world games and being a world champion? As how much I've advocate being a world champion. I said, to me, there's no honor that is more important than being a world champion. That is a legacy right there. I know some people don't care about legacy, but in 10, 20 years time, 30 years time, when we're not around, no one will remember if Ashton scored 380 or 400, but people will remember if Ashton won the world championship. Do you know what I mean?
Legacy is certainly I don't disagree. Legacy is certainly a part of of this, decision, right? Like I do, want some type of legacy. I do, like my name is in the record books right now, right? And it's at the top of them, but it may not always be there, and records are meant to be broken, right? But when you have a title like a world championship, like that's something that never really goes away. It's kind of just solidified in the history books, and it is what it is. I would really so legacy is a part of it for sure. I don't know. Like I was thinking about Keenan too the other day, and we were talking about this on another podcast. But I was just kind of wondering if he'd be able to do PA or something like that because
he's American, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's technically dual citizen, so we'd have to see. Yeah. But I think if he can, I think he should consider it. I'll probably message him about it later. Yeah.
How tall is Keenan, by the way?
He's probably not your height.
That man, how the hell does he make 105 look so easy?
Yeah, he's six. I think 6'1" or 6'2". He said it on the podcast in the past.
Yeah, he's like 6'1", about, give or take. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
bone density thing as well, isn't it? Like different cultures, different
Yeah.
like.
Yep.
It's
I think
I-
that's what it is. Yeah.
In water I sink, so it's definitely.
it's
I
a
just
bone
sink.
density thing. I know
It's
people don't
100%
like to
bone
talk
density.
about genetics, but it's
Yeah.
massive
Because
part in.
no, it's true because Keenan's a Korean man, you know, and I lived in Korea for 3 years, and a lot of Koreans in particular, every race there's genetic differences and variants, but like with a lot of Asian societies and cultures, especially, just because of their diet over thousands of years, a lot of them don't necessarily have the same bone density that say like Americans would have, right? Like for me, I have extremely dense bones, but I also have like muscle, so I have a very distinct look. But with Keenan, he looks very muscular and he's very jacked. But I'm fairly confident that his bone density is probably not like the same as mine, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then you look at Bob, for instance. Bob probably also has a very high bone density. Like Bob is not the most jacked dude in the world, but he is getting a lot better to his credit. So here's this,
Just throw that
he's
in
starting
there.
to look. He's definitely looking a lot more muscular than he used to. And he'll admit it. Like he used to look
Yeah.
really lanky. I'm sure that boy has like some ridiculous bone density too. Like for sure, it's very
I've been hit by a mini Jeep before, and all I got was a bruise on my leg. So I think I've got decent bone density too.
Yeah, I mean, I did like some crazy stuff too, and also did a lot of like combat sports and some violent sports, and like never broken a bone. I've broken other people's bones, never broken a bone. My own
On
bone.
what you just said there more, but you still believe your genetics is 6 out of 10.
But don't talk to Mo about
Yeah,
nah,
wait.
don't talk to Mo about
What
genetics.
does bone density have to do with powerlifting?
I'm just
But
saying.
it's
A
working
lot,
against me.
actually.
Guys
I don't know.
built
I
like
think it actually
Sebum,
helps.
and he goes, he's 6 out of 10 genetics.
Yeah.
6 out of 10. He's talking shit. Let's go
Hey.
back to Rouska. Don't talk about Mo and his dumb genetic
Wait.
thing.
I want to know a Mo scale. Where would mine be?
On your scale, you're basically 10 out of 10, in my view, right? You're 10 out of 10.
I don't think I'm 10 out of 10.
I'll probably
Have you
okay,
seen
I'll
Mo? You've obviously
I'll-
seen Mo, haven't you? Like he
Like,
goes,
I've seen
he's
him in
6 out of 10.
videos and
Yeah.
no.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
so
know he's just
Okay,
talking
so the
shit.
first factor, the fact that you're 6'1" automatically puts you out of that range. Like
Thank you very much.
it's just
No,
it's
he's
more
going
than average.
against
Right?
you.
If we're just going by numbers, it's much higher than the average, right? Yeah.
Okay.
It's like,
Oh no.
yeah.
No,
Wait,
he's
wait,
not
wait,
agreeing
wait,
with
wait.
you, you fucking imbecile.
and then we look at body weight. His body weight is also probably a standard deviation above average, right?
Okay.
And then muscle mass probably well above average.
Yeah.
So I don't know, 6 out of 10. Like
Okay, wait, let me review this, right? I keep on telling the boys they never listen, right? For general genetics, I'm happy to say I'm pretty high up there. Hey, if you want me, compare me to general population in terms of muscle mass and everything, I'm pretty well gifted. I'm happy to admit that. I work hard.
Yeah, you're a monster.
Yeah, my mom and dad definitely had something to do with that. Right. But in terms of powerlifting, leverages for squat, bench, deadlift, right? I'll probably say I'm somewhere around a 7 out of 10, to be honest with you.
He goes up by one every time.
I can accept 7 out of 10. I can accept 7 out of 10 for powerlifting.
Yeah. For powerlifting.
Like deadlift, I would say you're probably like 9.5 or 10. But for bench, for bench, I would probably say 5, and for squat, I'd probably say like 6.
Yeah, thank you.
But when you get 9.5 and 5 and 6, the average is no 6 out of 10. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it'd be like 7.3.
Hey, let's come.
It's fine.
I'm
Every time we speak to Mo, it goes up by 1. So by like next year, he'll be a 9 out of 10. It's fine.
Doubt that.
Moving on.
But if we think about this logically, though, just the last thing I want to say about this, if we look at the world stage, is there anyone there placing in the top 5 that isn't at least 7 out of 10 genetics for powerlifting? Probably.
Yeah, true.
Shut up, Jurins.
Jurins, yeah, exactly. With your 1K calories for the last.
But Jurins, I don't know what my deadlift ROM is bigger than your squat ROM.
It's probably bigger than him in total.
We measured it. I measured it on the thing. I gave my deadlift ROM. It was bigger than his squat ROM.
Yeah, that's wild.
Anyway,
so
let's
move on.
Anyway, he's like, we'll just look over that.
Let's move on. So yeah, Ash, again, this is the topic about you moving to the IPF. So of course, you've seen the King of 105, the one that actually almost does give a lot of
the IPF King of 105.
The IPF.
Yeah, I've seen him. Yeah.
Yeah, the IPF King 105 and the real world champion.
Yes.
So the guy that normally gives a lot of 105 a sleepless night in the on the
Mhm.
IPF site, right?
Yeah,
So
of course.
you've seen the message. How did you receive it?
Oh yeah, I saw what he had to say. I don't take personal offense to it. I mean, I think he's hungry to compete with the best in the world. I think he's hungry for a challenge and a competition that'll push him to be better than he's ever been. And I, respect and admire that about him. I think that it's very easy for people sometimes who win, a lot to kind of get into this rhythm of just continuing to win and, being challenged almost like after a while becomes this new scary foreign thing. I think for him, he's leaning into it and I think he's doing the right thing doing that. And I think it's going to make him better than he's ever been. If he has to go against me, he has to be better than he's ever been, or he just simply won't come close to winning. That's just the objective reality of it. That's not me being arrogant or bragging. I mean, I'm a relatively objective person. You probably could tell. Like, it won't happen unless he gets better. And I think, and I know that he can get better. So I want him to be better because I don't want to fly out to Lithuania. Granted that everything goes okay and I qualify for it and everything works out. Like I don't want to fly out there and the dude's not on his A game and doesn't have his shit together and doesn't perform well and push me because at the end of the day that's what I want. Win or lose, I want those battles. I mean, to me, that's when I feel the most alive in sport. So, I'm actually really happy that he's leaning into this challenge and that he really wants it and he's hungry for it.
I was going to add a little pice of extra information though, because the way SBD has.
Well, before you go there, I know what you were
Yeah.
about to say. Before you go there, Ash, I'm just going to ask this for you because you saying he need to be better against you. Do you think you need to be better against him?
Of course.
Because I've seen people asking questions, think, oh, do you think you're gonna beat Anatolii with your openers or second? Do you actually go into that mindset thinking, oh yeah, these people are wrong, I'm gonna beat him by my second or my first?
No, that's arrogance. I mean, I don't like to lean too far into that kind of thinking because if you do, sometimes you get burned doing that. Sometimes like when things don't pan out the way you don't want to, and your expectations are completely crushed, that can crush you psychologically. So every person that I compete with, like in this kind of scenario, I treat them like they're gonna beat me or that they're better than me, and I train like they're better than me, and that I have to make up ground and I have to become better than them. So that's just the way I look at it mentally. Even if I know, in the back of my mind that my total is bigger, that my second attempt totals were bigger than his best total. Like even though that's true, I still view it as like I can show up. This guy can improve, get stronger, be driven to beat me and beat me.
Are you actually American? Because I'm getting confused here, mate. I'm really getting I'm not getting the vibe that you are American.
I think one thing that is worth noting is like I think your military. One thing I think that's very important for you, your military background and upbringing. I can see it come through in every single thing you do. In the way you talk about training, in the way you talk about analyzing, handling injuries, motivation, mentality, in the way you also give your opponents respect. It does really come through and you kind of hold yourself to a high standard, which is pretty nice to see.
But Americans don't do that, Ash. They don't do that. Your team people don't do that.
No, a lot of them don't, but I certainly do. I'm, I don't always have to go with the flow of the crowd of the majority.
Because I thought maybe you will be saying as well, you're coming to the IPF for a mental vacation as well, because no one.
Yeah. No.
But
I would be excited to travel certainly, internationally again for some competitions. That would be a lot of fun.
Well, plus seeing us face to face would be great. You know what I mean? So
I think that. Sorry, carry on.
I was gonna say, would it be face to face though? Because Jurins is short.
I think Ashton hit the nail on the head though. Like if you're going into something thinking, oh, this is gonna be a breeze, there's always gonna be someone who's chasing you and who's hungry. So approaching anything with the intention of, like Bob said, having a vacation or coming in with the intention of, oh, this is gonna be really easy, like smooth for me. There's monsters hidden in every corner like that are hungry for it. So I think the hunger needs to stay. The second you stop being hungry, the sport ain't for you. Like any sport, whatever it is.
Yeah, you start a slow, painful death in the sport. Like you hit your peak, you rise, and then you just start to decline and fall. I mean, And I mean, one, that's the natural order of things, no matter how hungry we stay, right? But if we stay hungry, if we stay driven, if we find the next target to, to go after and to go against, and you find a reason, to be sort of intrinsically motivated and disciplined to continue to do what you're doing, then yeah. I mean, if I had no one to compete with and I was 150 kilos ahead of everyone and, I was just competing to compete, like I'm fairly certain I would just get bored and stop like pretty quickly, right? Like it wouldn't be the same to me anymore. I would always continue to lift and train because I love to train. I love to lift. I love to be, a physically formidable man. But, outside of like that, I wouldn't be, competing if I just was blowing everything out of the water. But the fact that I can compete, that there's other men out there that can push me to be the best that I can, possibly at this, is, that means something to me. So I take it seriously and I take everyone who challenges me seriously, and I treat them all like they're in striking distance.
Just don't pull more than me and we're good.
Well, I can't promise you that, man. Like if it goes good again, we'll see.
No, it's exciting though. Like seeing people like coming across to the IPF and stuff. Like especially on this podcast, we've been screaming at every single person that comes on from the USAPL saying, come across, because like they say, a rising tide,
Raises all ships.
It needs to be the case. Like we saw it with Britain with the standards, the A total and things like that. As soon as people have high standards to aim for, it makes them better. And I think powerlifting's at a point now where it's absolutely insane. The elite level of lifters are so far beyond anything that's ever come before.
I agree.
So
we have incredible talent right now.
So your goal is win worlds, push to Sheffields, and then World Games.
Yes, sir.
That's the long-term goal. Is that, I'll be honest with you, when you keep talking about you'll be done with powerlifting at this time, it makes me a little bit sad.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 10 years now, man, and I love powerlifting. I'll always love powerlifting. I'll always be a spectator. But as I mentioned, the natural order of things is that you get into something, you rise, you can become the best, you have a chance at it. It's, the journey and the story of the athlete or the hero or whatever, age-old stories, and then naturally, eventually there's a decline and a fall. And I've kind of thought about this at length lately, and I've asked myself, do I want to stick around long enough to see that decline and fall, or do I want to get out of the casino while the chips are high? Granted, I think I have a lot longer than 2 years of shelf life left in powerlifting. Don't get me wrong. I think I could probably rock this another 10, 15 years and, remain at this top level. But is that what I want? Is my life going to be changing? Am I going to have different goals? Am I going to want to do something else? And I've been thinking, like, maybe I want to do something else. And if I do, I want to be the best at that too. So I'll have to dedicate myself to that at that point. Like I said, training is always going to be a part of my life, but in competing and watching will always be a part of my life as long as powerlifting is around. But I won't be competing in it at the top level forever.
What's the end goal in terms of, obviously sky's the limit, but in terms of total, in terms of lift, squat, bench, dead, what would you leave and be completely satisfied with hitting?
Yeah, I mean, and those numbers have adjusted over time. If I could hit, because I've already hit the 500 bench before, so that was huge for me. So I want to hit a 500 close grip bench, like master grip. I want to hit, a 900, 880 to 900, 905, squat and deadlift. Like if I could do 2 of those or 3 of those, that would be great. And hit like a 23-ish hundred like training total, because my training total is already well over 22. If I can hit 2300, like just the training total, I think that would be really nice for me. That'd be good.
that is a 105. I think.
Yeah.
Like
I love it
because that's unattainable from like. Do you know what I mean? As in, like, if you
it's
hit
funny
that,
it's funny
who's
because
who's gonna beat it? Like 105, might as well call it a day for Sheffield.
Well, we say that now, but who knows? There might be, a boy that comes up one day just like I did and, does it.
There'll be some guy from the Pacific Islands who's
you made Mo go to
Samoa.
120s.
He's like, I'll take my chances with 120s and Bobby. Yeah, no, I think I'm excited to see what Bob does too. I know that he doesn't intend to, fill out 120 or anything like that, but if he can actually get to a legit 110 and compete in 120 and do all-time stuff for 110 and 120, I think that'd be really cool. But I guess we'll see.
Good. So he has to score 378 kilos as a 2.5 from Dennis Cornelius. So I'm praying for Dennis one day to come back. That would be an amazing battle right there at 120.
Oh, no doubt. And you know, I think with Dennis too, like I think he still has juice left in him too. I think it'll just be a matter of, you know, if it's what he wants to do. But yeah, I loved watching Dennis like many, many years ago back in the day when I used to see him compete in his prime and such. And it was always just so cool to see.
So
He's a Texas lad as well, isn't he?
No, I think he's a state above us, actually. I think he's in Oklahoma.
He's not
Yeah.
he's not Texas. Ash, can you just clear this for us, right? Because there's a lot of rumors
Sure.
going on social media now. Well, probably that's why you wanted to touch on. Can I leave you to touch on that?
Sorry. Is this about the Anatolii video?
No, the PA meet that Ash will be doing. There's a few rumors that are going on around. People start already insinuating that Ash is doing this PA meet so he can get a wild card for Sheffield. Can you just clarify here for the listeners?
I did not. That's not what I was on about.
Wow. No. I think by rules and technicality, so I haven't really talked about this for a long, long time. But I think by rules and technicality, since I technically did do an IPF meet in the past, I could technically qualify for a wild card. But it's highly unlikely. I don't see it happening. But if it did happen, I mean, you know, I'd go.
It would be insane because
what the hell is wrong with you, man? Well, why would you go Sheffield? You're not going to come world anymore.
Oh no, I'd go to Worlds too. Sheffield Worlds is after Sheffield, isn't it?
Yeah, Worlds is in June. Sheffield is in February.
There's plenty of time for a quick turnaround and repeat.
It will be a tough lineup though, because you Ashton obviously can do whatever you want to do, but you would have this PA qualifier meet, then you would have Sheffield, then you have PA Nats, and then you do Worlds. So I feel like you would obviously want to peak yourself for one of those. Actually, I was going to ask you an interesting question, because if you do Worlds, bear in mind, if Anatolii's 950, 960, whatever Anatolii's doing, would you hold yourself back on the world stage? Because obviously, you know, the Sheffield formula is based off.
I know what you're going to ask. Yep. Yeah, yes, I thought about this. So that's another reason why you got to take it seriously, because, you know, so I would honestly prefer to do Sheffield before Worlds, just so I could, you know, really aggressively push that total, because the world record total right now is, you know, not as high. So I'm just like, you know, I'm like, well, if I do Worlds and I win Worlds, I need to try to win it narrowly. And I need to be very strategic with how I train and how I do my attempt selection for that day, because, you know, any mistake means you could lose. And, you know, pushing it way too far out of reach means a lower likelihood of winning Sheffield. So those are all things that I've been thinking about in the background too. So it's definitely a good question.
Yeah. With your monster score, obviously that's definitely a 5K check there already that you're gonna have to be strategic about. With obviously Anatolii's also a monster squatter, is his record. He'll want to not lose it. There's also the bench. With the way your bench is trending right now, you might be a 230, who knows, you know, or we're well above 500 pounds. And then deadlift the 391. I gave you a tug, it's a heavy deadlift. But honestly, Ashton, you're a different breed, so I have no doubt that you probably want to give that a talk to on the Sheffield platform. So there is a lot of strategy that you need to look at, and obviously for the future.
Yes, it's very much true. I have to be very strategic, and I don't have a perfect answer for it yet, but I have been thinking and doing number crunch. So I'm already planning for this. Like I've already been thinking about this and doing number crunching for it. I don't have a precise answer yet, but I think I'm definitely getting closer to it. And I think as time moves on and we see how things develop, I think I'll have a better sense and idea of what exactly I'll need to do.
I think to me, it comes down to what you said there as well, on the day as well. You know what I mean? You prep yourself to push yourself as much as you can. And on that day, if you need for you to push, then you have to push to win. And if you don't need for you to push, and then you don't need to push. So if you are,
and don't be too aggressive,
if Anatolii end up a world being in a more level of strength, and then you're asking yourself, I don't need to push. Do you know what I mean? So that's how.
And I'm sure you guys all understand this. But what I was just going to say real quick was, like, another thing to consider is that IPF Worlds, you know, there tends to be smaller flights. It tends to be a faster pace meet, kind of like how Nationals was. What I just did, we had a 7-person flight for my weight class, and you know, it's not always necessarily the most optimal condition to put up the biggest total possible. So that really
Yeah.
wasn't my plan for the world stage regardless. But my plan really is just more so focused on kind of like this meet is to win and what strategies, what attempts will put me strategically in the best position to do that. So that's sort of my focus for worlds specifically because you guys know again it's a faster paced meet. There's very strict judging and everything needs to be done. Very precisely, and if it's not, you open the door for other people to come in and win. So, yeah.
What do you think are your like going forward to IPF are going to be the biggest challenges facing yourself as a lifter and the way you lift? And what do you think, in your opinion, will be things that you'll just naturally and instinctively just be able to own and run with?
Can you say that first part one more time? I'm sorry.
What things in like lifting in the IPF, like Sheffield, on that platform again, will be things that you might struggle with, or are like things that you're going to face, obstacles that you're going to face?
Yeah. I think just the biggest thing is just going to be ensuring that I lift to whatever standard that they have set in place. I've noticed for bench press, over the past few years, it hasn't looked too crazy. Squats, though, I have seen can look like hit or misses. I think when it comes to judging, because the rule technically and usually is just that the hip crease has to be below the knee joint, right? That's the rule. And a lot of times we look at squats that are in accordance with the rule, but we say, oh, that squat doesn't look good or it doesn't look deep enough. And it's just like, well, that's kind of stupid because it's the rule. But we factor in human error. We factor in a reputation that I think is being upheld at certain levels, like with USAPL Nationals or with IPF Worlds or with other bigger name meets like that. And they tend to exceed the standard in their judging sometimes. So that's what I try to train for. So I'm going to be tailoring my training going forward to what I think is the rigorous, judging and standard of the IPF, which isn't always necessarily in accordance with its rule book. Now, it's not necessarily fair, but if that's what it takes to win, that's what you do, right? You have to adjust and adapt and do what you can sometimes.
Yeah, it's meant to be like the benefit of doubt to the lifter, but like this isn't a
There's
go at
no
any ref.
benefit.
This isn't a
There's
go
no
at anyone
benefit.
before someone kicks up a fuss saying, "Oh, you don't know what it's like." But looking at it, it seems to be the benefit to the judge and the jury. Like if it's maybe, it'll be a red. Like before, it used to be maybe it'll be a white.
Yeah. Now they will for sure just red light you and not have second thoughts about it. And I've seen that so many times. I've seen squats that were replayed, the depth is in accordance with the rule and very much so, and they get 3 reds. And it's just like, okay. So, that's why I've even adjusted a couple of things in my training already since nationals to begin to account for those things.
Since we're talking about standards, I know Ash will take into your time and you probably need to go and eat and have another pint. So since we're talking about standards, one question about me. I saw the USAPL have updated the rule book. It means there's one there that says 3 red lights from the referees can be turned down by the judge.
Yep.
What do you guys feel about? Because I'm not USAPL. You guys are USAPL. I know we're getting USAPL England here. Yeah, but you're never going to see me there anyway. So,
yeah,
what do you guys think about it?
What do I think about it? You want to know what I think?
Yeah, your personal opinion, where someone or yourself, you go 3 red from all 3 refs. They're saying like your lift is no good, and then they turn it over to white. How do you that to me is just like what the fuck?
No, yeah, I think that's we've taken a step too far in my opinion. I think the 2-to-1 like being challenged, I think is a relatively like reasonable rule. Because like I said, human error does play a role sometimes in this. We use humans to judge. We don't use machines. We don't have like precision. We have humans, and they work hard. They volunteer and they do what they do. And I really respect refs and judges, and I'm really glad that we have them. We're fortunate, but they're not always impartial, right? So I do think that those 2-to-1 things are fair. But when it's 3 reds, I would say like 99% of the time, it was probably a glaringly bad lift in accordance to the rules in the rule book. And if that's the case, then there's no reason that we should be trying to overturn it a challenge, even if it's 1 in a million. I don't think one lift that's 3 reds that should be like 2 whites out of a million lifts. I don't think that justifies having a rule where you just slide them a $20 bill and then you can challenge it. Like to me, that's functionally ridiculous.
Because to me, like, when I saw the conversation I had with some of the Americans, like, that's almost like emphasize the credibility of the federation, because us in the
Yeah,
other,
and of the judges and of everyone. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So to me, like, when I saw that, I'm thinking, when IPF people were screaming about our rules being tougher than yours, you can't judge shit because your 3 reds are being turned down. Our one is standing. Our
Yeah.
even like you're talking about the 2-1. Sometimes you wanna go and to the judge. Gaston looks at you and it doesn't speak English. He just said,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? So yeah. Last few questions, guys, for Ashton, so we can let him go. Ash, to me, is about, again, I know we spoke about in terms of like the goals
Mhm.
coming for the next year or so, and we touched down on the numbers there. But to me, it's not that. To me, I'm just my question is about when it's not if when you go to world,
Yes.
what are your expectation of the world championship? I know you've been to world before in terms of you've traveled before to the world. I'm not talking about the travel here, but you did equipped. And the time when you traveled, powerlifting was not the powerlifting it is today. So
No, it was a lot different.
yeah, what are you expecting when you come and see us next year?
What I'm expecting. I mean, I expect some things to be similar. With all that said, right? Like I do expect, the judging was pretty strict back then too. Actually, when I competed, and so I expect that to be relatively constant. I actually had a lift overturned, a squat overturned at my world championship because it was 2-1 and because it was actually really good. But so I do expect that, and I'm not even totally closed off to the idea of having a squat red lighted. Now, granted, I do squat very deep in training generally and in meets. It can still happen. And let's face it, like I said earlier, judges are not always impartial, and I am an American lifter. And depending on who's out there, they might not be gunning for pulling for you to win. If all of the judges are European and Anatolii's Ukrainian, and I come over and I'm American, you know, I'm not saying that they're just going to give him a title. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is they might, there might be roadblocks and obstacles that make it more difficult than it should be, right? And so that's what I'm preparing for. And even if that's not the case at all, at least I'll be prepared for it.
So is that again, does it get into your mind as well, you Americans, when you come across thinking, oh, we are American, we are carrying a chip on our shoulder, we're going against these Europeans. Sometime people might be biased. Does it occur into your mind that things like that can happen?
Oh yeah, of course. It certainly occurs in my mind, but even with all that said, I still think, as I alluded to a second ago, that I can train for that, prepare for that, and still succeed.
Because because we get Americans and the other people coming thinking, oh yeah, they're being tough on me. But sometimes it's not they being tough with you, but what you said that is the standards. The standards you're lifting in America and the standard you lift across the board is different. Because again, the reality is, well, I'm going to say this here before I get canned. If you have a German ref, an Italian ref, to me, these are the toughest ref in RPF. If you got a German, Italian, you almost like you can shit yourself. And then we saw that at the Europeans last year, Indy and Mo. How many people bombed out? I'm talking about not novice lifters. These are world-class lifters. They've been seasoned international, but they bombed out because what? We had those nations as referees. These are tough.
Yeah, see, and that's what I'm saying. Like, so that's what I was kind of mentioning earlier. Like, why even, you could also go the other way with this argument. Like, why even have a rule book if all your judges are just going to be exceedingly strict and not even follow it, to some extent, right? Like, I don't think it's healthy necessarily for a federation to go the complete opposite direction either way just for the sake of it. I think that, we have rules, we have a rule book, it's there for a reason. If rules need to be amended, we vote, we amend them. Otherwise, you follow the rule book. But like you're saying, like, yeah, that does happen. And you do have, certain people from certain countries that are very particular about their judging and are maybe much more strict than what the rule book dictates. And so, competing at that level, if you can't change all the judges, you have to be prepared for that.
Cool. My last one, are you an SPD athlete?
Yes.
So everything is covered, so you're good.
Mm-hmm.
Mo, Indy, your last ones, guys?
Mine was not necessarily the last one. It was just it's just a little bit of extra information. I know.
There you go.
I was just going to talk about. I'm not mentioning anything but Nigerian Indy. Calm down. I was just gonna mention, like, the Anatolii video. Just in case, I don't know if you've reached out and talked to the DMs or anything, but that actual clip was recorded in Malta after the World Championship. So it wasn't like they videoed and recorded him straight after your performance at USAPL Nationals or anything like that. So yeah, it's been marketed to seem more confrontational than it is, but I think that's a very good angle, and I think it's actually pretty cool.
I do too.
Yeah. But also, I wanted to lean into the rumor that Jurins mentioned randomly, which was about, a potential wild card. Because now that I've thought about it in the background, it is very possible. And if the opportunity did come up, in my head right now, there is you and there is Ashton Perkin, not really. Sorry, Austin Perkin, not really, because he's never done IPF, if I remember correctly. But
Yeah,
so far, there's you and then there's
no, wait,
Ross.
actually, I think he might have done the IPF Collegiate Cup. I'm not sure.
I think it needs to be like an IPF Open Championship. So you need to have won worlds or a world level competition to be get a Sheffield invite. So Austin definitely can't do it. But there's you and Ross. I don't know if whether Ross is doing the same PA qualifier as you, but if both of you are back into the IPF pool, according to the rules, there is a chance that you might actually get a wild card. Now, if that does happen, it's a far-fetched one. Is that something would you take up the offer? Would you be interested to do it?
Yes. Yes, because what I would do is after that meet,
pay off your mortgage.
in November that I'm going to do. Yeah. I just buy a couple houses. No, but what I actually would do though, on a serious note, is I would train pretty aggressively to try to put up the biggest total I've ever put up again at Sheffield. And then at Worlds, the residual, I would focus basically more so on, I don't want to say maintenance, like I still want to get better, but at the same point in time, I won't be training or pushing necessarily as aggressively. That would be more so a strategic thing to try to win and posture myself in the best position possible to win versus put up like a PR total. But Sheffield, like for sure, that's where I'd want to leave it all out there. PR total, put up something massive, flex on everybody, and then yeah.
Indy.
Mine's not really a question, but I think it's a nice way to finish. We get a lot of younger listeners and people up and coming in powerlifting and stuff like that, like listening to the podcast. If you had to give 3 pieces of advice to people specifically regarding powerlifting and stuff that's maybe helped you, the biggest impact that it's had on your training, what would be your top 3? This is what you should do as a powerlifter to get to where you are.
Okay. Number 1, accessories. Push accessories and push them hard. I'm a big accessory guy. It is what it is.
This is at Jurins.
I can see Ashton is talking about it and he's looking at me straight. I can see that.
Yeah. Number 2 would be to consider, the context of a bad day or a bad week or even a bad month in the macro, right? So not just looking at what's in front of you or what's directly in front of you or behind you, but also looking at, what had preceded that even, or what is going to be beyond, what you're thinking about and how things can potentially trend. So just to not get too caught up in the, if you don't feel great on a day or a week, to not get too hung up in that, to perhaps even work with like a coach or even just like a training partner, right? It doesn't have to be a coach, someone who can be relatively impartial to your training and give you honest feedback and say, well, like this week sucks, sure, but you just had a baby 2 weeks ago, you just moved into your house, whatever, right? Fill in the blank. To consider, the macro and not just the micro, right? So to think a little bit about both of them and to have a healthy balance of thinking of both of them. So that would be my second piece of advice. My third piece of advice would be to just stick with it. People throughout history, empires, rise and fall, there's ebb and flow. Same thing in sports, same thing in powerlifting, right? People are going to rise to the top. They don't stay there forever. No one stays there forever. If you hang around long enough and you get better the whole time that you're in, there's a chance that you could be in striking distance, just depends on a lot of other factors, but you have to stick around long enough to kind of see sometimes. I mean, there are sure some guys who rise up the ranks really quickly, but they really rarely ever tend to be just number 1, right? I mean, if you look at Austin Perkins, he's a young man, granted, but he's been powerlifting for a long time. You know, me winning, I've been powerlifting for a very long time. You know, when Dennis was on his, Rager, he's been lifting for a long time. Even the guy who just won 125 at nationals, he had a 950.5 total, Devin Williams. He's been lifting weights for a long time. And these are not just guys that are just jumping into this and just, pulling it off. Like, no, this takes time, this takes years. And for Devin, he's a great example of this. Loved that 125 kilo fight, by the way. It was really, really interesting to watch. Like, he's been lifting for a long time, and he's made a lot of progress from his meets to meets. But he's not like a stranger to lifting weights and shifting weight. Like, he's been doing this a while. And, the opportunity opened up and he seized it. Jared Martin, same thing. Very successful 125 lifter over his career. He's been doing this a long time too. It takes time. So you have to be patient and you have to continue to do it. You have to persist. You have to persevere. So perseverance really is the third thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
Thanks, mate. That was brilliant, Ash. Thank you very much again for coming and talking to us. Again, as always, you know me, I'm always gonna come calling when you do your PN, especially when you fuck up there. I'm gonna be like, Ash, what?
What were you thinking, man? Yeah.
So I know that PN you're doing. Sorry, the comp you're doing the next few weeks are probably just gonna go there and do your openers and just go home just to qualify. I think PA you don't even need to do a total, isn't it? You can just do a bench.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's a very low bar. So I will go and I'll put up something decent in total and qualify, but it won't be, of course, like a max effort thing.
It'll be so funny if you go there, you just score like a 200 kilo squat, you bench 150, you just
full conventional, like God intended.
Conventional 175.
Yeah.
Just to get to
if we're doing conventional, 375 minimum.
That's a money meet though. There's a check.
It is a money meet, yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of money associated with it, yeah.
So yeah, you go there and put some decent number to win that check. So P and Nat, don't push too hard because we want to get you fresh.
Well, you're not just gonna write off Mikey Davis to the corner. I mean,
I'm not even 100% sure what he's gonna do yet, like 105 or 120. But I mean, I know that.
Good question, yeah, because it's a very good question for him.
Yeah, but he's a formidable competitor too. So
he has stayed in the pocket and waited for an opportunity to come up.
Did you guys notice when Mr. Rouska was talking about the World Championship, he did not mention any other 105 except Anatolii?
Yeah, that's reasonable though, because it's him.
He was ahead of the pack.
Anatolii, a lot of space, and then the rest of us. So
yeah, so Anatolii's got the world record. That's really the main sort of functional reason. But I mean, I don't know. Emil Norling, obviously a very impressive lifter, has put up over a 2,000-pound total. Michael Davis has put up over a 2,000-pound total, and Mo, when he gets everything together, he could put up over a 1,000-pound total.
Yeah, I'll be in my corner chilling. Don't worry.
You got to go for the head. You know what I mean? Like when you're talking about 83s, you have to talk about Delaney. Yeah. You can't talk about Jurins King Gutmove, can you? Do you know what I mean? So you can't.
Why do you have to be like that? Why do you have to be like that? Yeah, because we're ending, and you're ruining the recording. Watch me pull 800 pounds.
He's not sure about the number even.
I'm pulling 400 kgs at Euro, so it's fine.
Thank you very much for coming on, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, hey, yeah, totally awesome talking with you guys again. Whenever you guys want me on again, just let me know. I'll be there.
No
Beautiful. Cheers. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thank you. Sorry, guys. That was my little one. So he's making his own songs. So yeah, for those that will be listening to us, please, guys, just like and send us any feedback. And if you have any question, guys, reach out to Ashton. And he's a very, very, very kind American. You will answer your question. He's not like those type of Americans that leave you guys unread. Ashton will always make right. So on that note, guys, thank you, Ash, and see you down the road, my friend. Thanks.
All right. See you guys soon.